Sarah sat in her small, cluttered apartment in New York City, surrounded by the echoes of a life that had crumbled overnight. Just a month ago, she had been a successful graphic designer, engaged to the man she thought was her soulmate, and filled with plans for a bright future. But then, the layoff notice came, followed by a painful breakup that left her feeling utterly hollow and adrift. The city that once buzzed with opportunity now felt like a cage of broken dreams, its towering skyscrapers casting long shadows over her spirit. Her motivation was born from desperation. She needed to escape the suffocating weight of failure and find a way to rebuild herself from the ashes. Packing a single suitcase and loading up her old, reliable car, she decided to drive across the United States to her cousin's home in California, hoping the journey would offer clarity and healing. The initial challenge was overwhelming. Fear gnawed at her insides, self-doubt whispered that she wasn't strong enough for such an undertaking, and the financial strain of unemployment made every mile feel like a gamble. As she pulled out of the city, the cacophony of honking horns faded into the hum of the highway, and she took a deep breath, telling herself that this was her chance to start over, even if she didn't know how. The first leg of the journey took her through the rolling hills of Pennsylvania, where the lush greenery and quiet towns offered a stark contrast to the urban chaos she had left behind. But the solitude soon magnified her anxieties. Alone in the car for hours, she found herself replaying every mistake, every what-if that had led to this point. Her coping mechanism was simple yet profound. She started a journal, pouring out her fears and frustrations onto the pages. Writing became her anchor, a way to process the emotional turmoil without letting it consume her. She reminded herself of small victories, like navigating unfamiliar roads without getting lost or finding a cheap motel for the night, and these moments slowly chipped away at her self-doubt. As she crossed into the Midwest, the vast expanse of the Great Plains stretched out before her, a sea of golden wheat under an endless sky. Here, she encountered her first real test of resilience when her car broke down in a small town in Nebraska. Stranded and with limited funds, panic threatened to overwhelm her. But instead of giving in, she reached out to a local mechanic, who not only fixed her car at a discount but shared stories of his own hardships and how he had rebuilt his life after losing his farm. This interaction was a turning point. Sarah realized that struggle was universal, and kindness could be found in the most unexpected places. She felt a glimmer of empowerment, understanding that her journey wasn't just about escaping pain but about connecting with others and learning from their wisdom. Pushing onward, she drove through the rugged beauty of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, where the towering peaks and crisp mountain air filled her with a sense of awe and humility. Hiking a trail one afternoon, she confronted a steep, rocky path that mirrored her internal climb. Her legs trembled with exhaustion, and that familiar voice of self-doubt crept in, telling her to turn back. But she dug deep, drawing on the resilience she had been building mile by mile. With each step, she focused on her breath, on the strength in her muscles, and on the lessons from the road, that fear was temporary, and courage was a choice. Reaching the summit, she looked out over a breathtaking vista of valleys and peaks, and in that moment, she felt a surge of empowerment unlike anything she had ever known. It wasn't just about the view, it was about realizing that she had the inner strength to overcome obstacles, both external and internal. The journey continued through the deserts of Arizona, where the harsh, barren landscape reflected the raw edges of her own emotions. Under the scorching sun, she grappled with loneliness and the lingering pain of her past. But instead of retreating, she practiced mindfulness, sitting in silence and observing the beauty in the starkness, the resilience of cacti thriving in arid soil, the way the sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and purple. She began to see her own struggles not as failures but as opportunities for growth, understanding that just as the desert bloomed after rain, she too could find hope in adversity. Her coping mechanisms evolved from mere survival to active self-discovery. She started listening to podcasts on personal development, meditating each morning, and setting small, achievable goals for each day of travel. By the time she reached the California coast, the transformative climax of her journey unfolded as she stood on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The waves crashed against the rocks below, a powerful, rhythmic force that seemed to echo the resilience she had cultivated. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of profound gratitude and clarity. She had started this trip feeling broken and lost, but through the miles and the moments of fear, doubt, and connection, she had discovered a new version of herself, one grounded in wisdom, strength, and hope. The lesson was clear: personal growth isn't about avoiding pain but embracing it as a teacher, and true empowerment comes from within, forged in the fires of challenge. In that serene moment, Sarah made a promise to herself to carry this wisdom forward, to build a life not on the ashes of her past but on the foundation of resilience she had built. The journey ended not as an escape, but as a rebirth, leaving her with an inspiring message that she would share with others: no matter how dark the night, the dawn always follows, and within each of us lies an unbreakable spirit capable of rising from any ashes to find hope. Break time equals 5s, greater than the city had always been Maria's compass, its skyscrapers pointing her toward success, its bustling streets dictating her pace. For 5 years, she had poured her soul into her marketing career, believing that each promotion, each accolade, was a step toward fulfillment. But when the email arrived one gray Monday morning, cold and impersonal, informing her that her position was eliminated due to restructuring, her world tilted on its axis. The initial shock gave way to a gnawing emptiness, as if the very ground beneath her had crumbled. Days blurred into weeks spent scrolling through job listings, her confidence waning with each rejection. The once vibrant colors of her apartment seemed muted, and the constant hum of traffic outside her window became a reminder of a life moving on without her. Fear coiled in her stomach: fear of failure, of financial ruin, of becoming just another statistic. It was during one of these sleepless nights, staring at a map pinned to her wall, that her eyes settled on the jagged lines of the Sierra Nevada mountains. A memory surfaced: her grandfather, a quiet man of few words, had once told her, "When you're lost, Maria, sometimes the best way to find yourself is to get lost on purpose." He had loved hiking those trails, and though he was gone now, his wisdom lingered like an echo. With a trembling resolve, she decided to honor his memory and her own frayed spirit by embarking on a solo 3-day hike along a moderate trail he had often described. The decision itself was a small act of rebellion against her self-doubt, a flicker of hope in the darkness. Packing her backpack felt like assembling pieces of a new identity: a sturdy tent, a water filter, dried meals, and a journal to document the journey. Each item was a commitment to facing the unknown, and as she zipped the bag closed, a mix of anxiety and anticipation stirred within her. The drive to the trailhead was a quiet meditation, the city's noise fading into the whisper of pine trees and the crisp mountain air. Stepping onto the path, her boots crunching on gravel, she felt a profound shift. The weight of her backpack was tangible, but so was the lightness in her heart. For the first hour, every rustle in the bushes made her jump, her mind conjuring fears of bears or getting hopelessly lost. She questioned her sanity: what was a city girl like her doing alone in the wilderness? But as she walked, the rhythm of her footsteps became a mantra, steadying her breath. She noticed the way sunlight filtered through the canopy, painting dappled patterns on the forest floor, and the scent of damp earth filled her senses. It was in these small moments that she began to quiet the inner critic, replacing "I can't" with "I am here." By afternoon, the trail steepened, and fatigue set in. Her muscles ached, and doubts crept back in. What if she couldn't make it to the campsite? What if this was just another failure? She paused by a babbling stream, dipping her hands into the icy water, and remembered her grandfather's stories of perseverance. He had faced hardships in his life, immigrating to a new country, starting over, yet he always found solace in nature's simplicity. Drawing strength from his example, she decided to take it one step at a time, focusing on the present rather than the overwhelming whole. That evening, as she pitched her tent near a serene alpine lake, the sky blazed with hues of orange and purple. Sitting by the water's edge, journal in hand, she wrote about the day's struggles and small victories. "I was afraid," she scribbled, "but I kept moving." Maybe that's all resilience is, not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. The stars emerged, countless and brilliant, and for the first time in months, she felt a sense of peace. The vastness of the universe reminded her that her problems, while real, were part of a larger tapestry. Sleep came easily that night, cradled by the sounds of nature. The second day brought new challenges, a steep ascent that left her breathless and a momentary misdirection that forced her to retrace her steps. Frustration bubbled up, but instead of succumbing to panic, she practiced deep breathing, a technique she'd read about for stress. She realized that getting lost wasn't a catastrophe, it was an opportunity to problem solve, to trust her instincts. This shift in perspective felt empowering, as if she was rewiring her brain to see obstacles as invitations to grow. Along the way, she met fellow hikers, a retired couple sharing stories of their own life transitions, and a young man who spoke of finding clarity after a personal loss. These brief connections reinforced that she wasn't alone in her struggles. Resilience was a universal human experience. By the time she reached the summit on the third day, sweat-soaked and exhilarated, the view took her breath away. Rolling peaks stretched to the horizon, a silent testament to endurance and beauty. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of awe and gratitude. In that moment, she understood the wisdom her grandfather had imparted: the path to self-discovery isn't always straight or easy, but it's in navigating the twists and turns that we uncover our true strength. She had started this journey feeling broken, but now she felt whole, not because her problems were solved, but because she had proven to herself that she could face them. The descent was lighter, both in step and spirit. Back at the trailhead, as she loaded her gear into the car, she knew this was just the beginning. The mountains had taught her that resilience isn't about avoiding falls, it's about learning to rise each time, with a heart full of hope and eyes open to new possibilities. Maria drove away, carrying not just memories, but a renewed sense of purpose, a reminder that even in the darkest times, the unseen path within us can lead to the brightest light.